Welcome
what
back.
it is.
Yes.
Indeed. The feel-good breakfast show, and feel like we did that in tandem right there. That's beautiful. We have to do it in tandem sometimes, though. We asked you something on social media, and that was, have you ever hosted a real cool house party and things got a bit wild? I have earlier found out that Leanne was probably the person who called the cops on me. So let's take a look at some of your comments. Lauren Joy has mentioned her story, and this was, good morning. Yes, it was a housewarming party. There was alcohol. My auntie got drunk/gesape, and she danced with a biker. And then the next day, she wanted to know what happened, and we told her, and she was in complete denial. Smiley face, smiley face, smiley face. Wow.
Oh, wow, I love it.
Then there's, oh, wow, this person's name is Saint Bridget. On Friday, kids in my school in lower grades hosted a birthday party for one of their classmates. All of a sudden, we were showered with cold drinks and everyone was trying to run. It was a mess. I also took a video of the whole situation that was happening because that's very important to document it. I'm thinking of showing them their craziness when they are all grown up one day. Like, save some for later, you know?
Exactly.
Yes.
Exactly.
And then Gary says, true story.
Yes.
Hello, Gary. Morning, Gary.
We love Gary.
A good few years ago, Gary was organising a housewarming party after some major renovations and upgrades. Gary used to overhear people in the queues at their local retail store talking about going. And then Gary invited about 30 people, but there were well over 200 people there, and eventually ended when the sun came up, as all good house parties should end.
Well, thank you for those scary stories. Keep them coming. But now it is time for another edition of our Wednesday feature, where we focus on the unconventional side of the law.
Yes.
It's called So Now What? And we're joined once again by our expert lawyer and director at legalese.co.za, Eitan Stern, everybody!
Yes.
Now, the Rugby World Cup is starting this Friday, and many people will be having a braai or a get-together to catch the exciting game. So today, we'll be focusing on what your legal rights and recourses are when you want to have a gathering at your residence without disturbing the peace. Eitan, hello.
Good morning.
Order.
We'd love to have you in our back pocket,
I'm loving hearing the house party stories.
They get better. I only gave you 3.
I've heard all of yours already. And
okay.
I'm
sorry.
Let's just say that it's good that they were off air.
Yeah. Well, let's start off with what are the neighbourhood rules for how late and how loud a party can be if you are sharing a space with neighbours or living in a...
Okay, so this really touches on 2 sets of laws. It's first of all what we call the noise around nuisance.
Yeah.
And then it also touches on sort of criminal laws around noise regulation. So, you know, there's no exact rule on how late a party can be. And often it's going to depend on a reasonable time to be making a noise. So, for example, during the day, you can have construction work during the day, which makes a hell of a lot of noise, but you couldn't have that at night. So noise levels are really about reasonableness, and they often depend on where you're based. So if you're living out in, say, the leafy suburbs of Constantia, then you have a higher expectation of quiet than if you are, say, living in the center of town.
Yeah.
So depending on the different area, there are going to be different bylaws around how late you can have noise, and it's all around reasonableness. And if you want to know, you can check the bylaws for your exact area. But a kind of rough guide would be around 10 p.m. on a weekday, and say a little bit later, 11 or 12 on a weekend. But it's really going to be about whenever you're starting to be a nuisance to your neighbors. Okay. And if we all look deep down inside of us without any a couple of beers, we know when we're becoming a nuisance and then we should switch the music
I don't know
down.
if that's entirely accurate. Sometimes you just feel like you're saying the right thing all the time and you don't know about these things. However, you know, I told you about my story about the 4 policemen that pitched up in my house, though. And the thing is, yes, it was probably her. But, and the thing is about notifying people around you as a practice.
Sure.
I just wanted to find out if there's any legality around doing the knocks on the doors around your home and saying, I'm going to be having a little bit of a party. You are invited if you want to come through, but it's going to get a bit noisy because it's my birthday or it's the Rugby World Cup.
Yes.
So any legality around that notification, possibly waiving a complaint later?
Okay, so there's no law that says that you have to notify your neighbours.
All right.
Except if you live in a block of flats or a security complex or any sort of sectional title neighbourhood, then there might be internal rules that say you have to notify, or there might be internal rules around how late you can have music. So it's always worth checking the rules of your body corporate if you're in a building. But while there might not be a legal obligation, there's always kind of a moral obligation or just being polite. So if you want to try and ensure that there's not going to be noise complaints, it's good to just expectation manage your neighbors by saying, look, we're going to be having some people over, we're going to be switching the music off at 11, and then, you know, people know what to do from there.
Yeah, because I mean, there's been many times, like I stay next door to students, right?
Okay.
So I don't know when they study, because we're out here partying 24/7. Y'all know who you are.
It kind of reminds me of
So what I want to know is, like, come 2 o'clock in the morning,
Sure.
when it's still doof, doof, doof. I've
Yes.
called the police many a times.
Okay,
And
good
the
for
police
you.
rock up. So it says to me that there is a right and a wrong where this happens.
For sure.
Because then the police would be like, actually, we've got more important
For
things
sure.
to do.
So again, your city bylaws, and depending on where you live, but
Yeah.
your city bylaws are definitely going to say that by 2 a.m. music should be off.
Yeah.
And then also it's definitely then causing a nuisance. Now,
Exactly.
quite interestingly enough, when it comes to the right to gather,
Yeah.
you know, this is actually a constitutionally protected right. So our constitution defends our right to have house parties. Obviously, in South Africa, we've got a history of discrimination, and the law needed to protect people's rights to get together.
Yeah.
So if you kind of see it in that way, the law protects our right to have parties. But just as you're allowed to enjoy your property, you can't stop other people from enjoying their rights
True
in their
story.
property. So that's where this law of nuisance comes in.
Okay.
So have fun, but as soon as you start becoming a nuisance to the people around you, then you're doing something wrong, and the
Okay.
police should shut you down. You can be causing damage to the people. Yeah.
Nuisance.
I wasn't
love
a
that.
nuisance. I really wasn't a
think you
nuisance.
were.
No, I was not a
I
nuisance.
think if 4 policemen rocked up, you were being a
You might
nuisance.
be a nuisance.
You know what?
Or maybe they just knew they were going to Carl Wasey's house.
Possibly. Who knows these things? Eitan Stern will be here again, and I must just say, you may have some questions, you may have some, reasons as to why 4 policemen rocked up at your place, but we will continue this conversation. So now what with Eitan Stern just after this?
It's my feel-good breakfast show.
So let's continue this conversation with Eitan Stern from legalese.co.za, a lawyer, a director, and a man who knows all about house parties and the legality thereof. I didn't mean he knows house parties, I mean he knows the law around house parties. I've never seen him at one yet. Now, to continue the conversation, when you have a house party, sometimes you kind of overstock.
Yes.
And next thing you know, there are some people who pitch up and they're like, hey, can I purchase a bottle of that if you don't mind? What are the legalities around selling alcohol at your house party?
All right. So some people do it because they purchase too much stock, and
Yep.
some people might do it to try to cover the cost of the house party. The answer is it is a flat no. You
Okay.
can't sell, if you are selling alcohol at any point ever, you need a license to do it.
Yeah.
And that's to make sure that you're doing it safely, and that's to make sure you're not doing things like selling alcohol to kids.
Yeah.
So you always need the license. You cannot sell alcohol at house parties. Now, certainly when I grew up, there were all kind of tricks that people had around us. Like, we're not selling alcohol, we're selling coupons which get you alcohol. We're
Okay.
selling entrance. I mean, we might have, I know people that might have done parties
Yeah.
like that in their youth. But that is also not allowed. The law is smarter than that and sees through it, which it's hard to believe when you're 17 years old, but the law does see through that. So you can't sell alcohol, you can't sell coupons, you can't sell entrance. If you are doing that, you need a license, an alcohol license or an event license.
Oh, interesting. All right, so what if someone gets hurt at
can see
your
Carl's
house?
plan- Carl's already
I
changed his
know,
plans
it's
for
like
Saturday
you can
night.
See, he's like,
left
what
the
am I
room
going
already."
to do? What am I going to do? Because now everybody that comes to your house will know.
Tell them one story, and now suddenly I'm the house party king.
Sorry.
It's okay. No,
Buy a ticket to come to my house
Yes, a
party.
coupon.
Okay, so what if someone gets hurt
Yes.
at your house party, or there's damage to your property? Who's liable?
Sure. So luckily, and according to our law, no, you're never responsible. You're not normally responsible for other people's actions. So everyone's going to be responsible for their own actions. So if your friend goes into your neighbor's garden and steals their dwarf ornament, then that person's going to be liable. But if you are bringing people onto your property and you're arranging an event and you are negligent with what you do, for instance, you run the house party on your roof, or you don't cover your pool, or you do something that's negligent and someone gets hurt, then you are going to be liable, or you could potentially be liable for the damage that's caused.
Okay. And if damage to your own property?
Damage to your own property, damage to someone. If your negligence leads to damage to yourself, to someone else, to the country, to anyone, if the cause is your negligence, then you can be liable for it. But if you're doing a good job, arranged a house party, music's off by 12, you've got decent music playing, you haven't invited Carl or his friends to come, then you know, then you're not going to be, then you've done everything correct, and someone still does something silly, then that person's going to be liable themselves.
Basically.
Next question,
Yes, sir.
Eitan Stern, legal extraordinaire. What are the legalities around your neighbours asking you to play a song for them?
It really depends on the
No,
song.
I'm just kidding. No, what I would like to know is that in a nutshell, you know, Rugby World Cup's coming up. Everybody's excited. People have done renovations for the Rugby World Cup, by the way. I know a few who have made a space for themselves in their backyard or converted their garage. Now, what are some of the staple rules that we need to follow and adhere to avoid any police taking action, any 4 policemen knocking at your door, as we've seen in the past?
So, it's the big things we've spoken about. No selling alcohol.
Yes.
Okay. If you're running a big event, you're going to need some sort of an event license.
Yes.
You got to make sure that you're not being a nuisance to your neighbors. So notify your neighbors, get the music off at a reasonable hour, and don't disturb anyone else's property. And take all precautions. So check your bylaws and take all precautions to make sure yourself or no one else gets hurt. And if you are doing this reasonably and you're a good, upstanding citizen, want to have some fun with your friends, watch the rugby or enjoy Heritage Day, there's absolutely no problem. But when you step over the line, you start damaging other people's property or causing a nuisance to other people, then you've got a bit of an issue.
There we go. That is our segment for today. So now what? Thank you so much, Eitan
Only a
Stern
pleasure.
from legalese.co.za for being here with us and, of course, making sure that we know all the rules when it comes to all things house party. Did you take notes? Good.
Took a few